Ladies and gentlemen, tech enthusiasts and aspiring developers, welcome to the grand opening ceremony of Opencode'23, a journey into the world of open source development. Today marks the beginning of an extraordinary month-long event dedicated to innovation and collaboration. Opencode'23 isn't just an event, it's a platform that unites diverse minds and talents in the pursuit of technological excellence. Over the next few weeks, we invite you to immerse yourself in a plethora of projects spanning various domains, including web development, app development, competitive programming, blockchain, machine learning, and design. But wait, that's not all. We also have in store an array of engaging mini competitions and exciting events such as Code Guerra, CTFs, and Kaggle contests, and enlightening speaker sessions scheduled throughout the duration of Opencode'23. We are here not just to code, but to learn, grow, and have a fantastic time together. Your contributions won't go unnoticed. We have prizes and goodies worth over 1.2 lakhs, awaiting those who excel. Top performers will earn cash prizes, certificates, and access to premium tools. And for our exceptional second year contributors from IIIT Allahabad, an exclusive opportunity to interview for Geek Heaven awaits. To all the incredible participants who've joined us today, your passion and commitment to open source development are the cornerstone of this event. Your presence here ignites the spirit of collaboration and innovation. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to introduce Mr. Aniket Raj, our speaker for today. Aniket is a seasoned professional with a wealth of experience in community building, operations, and tech oriented roles. Notably, Aniket has previously engaged as a full stack engineer at BitGrit, where he conducted webinars and workshops on cutting edge topics such as machine learning, data science, blockchain, and game development. Aniket's multifaceted career spans community leadership roles, including his tenure as the head organizer at the Script Group, a leading tech driven club at MIT WPU. Currently, as a community lead at Dayfolio, Aniket brings his expertise to the forefront, driving community engagement and operations. Please join me in welcoming Aniket Raj, whose insights and experiences promise to enlighten us during the speaker session. Over to you.
Awesome. Um, hey everyone, I'm Aniket. I take care of the community here at Devfolio. And once again, thank you, Rishika, for that really great intro. Yeah, I mean, I try my best to help developers around. Was a dev back in college, but once I, started running my own community with the help of my friends, then I realized that is something also I want to sort of delve into, and hence that's what I'm trying to do here at Devfolio. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna jump right into my slides. I'll give a quick heads up on what we'll be talking about today, and I'll just wait for a confirmation if my screen is visible. Okay, so yeah, one second, let me just this full screen. Cool. So yeah, like today's speaker session is mostly about why you're here at the hackathon. That's part of like the open source initiative. What we are trying to do here is give you a heads up on what open source is about, what are the benefits, and then how I'm trying to keep the slides also is I'm not just gonna throw in a lot of content at you. It's just gonna be like some simple explanations, and the organizers already have collated some popular questions, and what I'll be doing is I'll be answering them with the help of my slides. So at least just to set some context, what I'm going to do is we can just like get started with why contribute to open source. Basically, like I'm pretty sure everyone knows about open source here. Basically, like the software you're writing is publicly available, which anyone can contribute, to the best of their capabilities. Now, why do we do that? Is one thing is like it's a matter of the community spirit, right? There might be so many open source projects that you might be using without even knowing it. So this is a way of you to like also give back to the community as well by engaging with these open source projects, helping them be better and more helpful for other devs out there. So like just like I've listed a couple of points here. The first thing is it encourages collaboration. Basically, like if it's just 2 3 people working on a single project that is solving a lot of problems, that's great. But the moment you make it open source, you get a lot of new insights, new ways of solving those problems. What more can be added by different people across the globe? And given that all of this is online, it's quite easy to sort of collaborate on such kind of projects. And then it also ensures transparency, like there is nothing fishy going on. Everyone can see what's happening, how it is working, why is it working. um, so like under the hood there's nothing going on, but you kind of also get to understand like whatever the project is about, how is it working end to end, right? And of course, like community driven development totally works out. Each of these projects have their own documentation on how to maintain the project, how to contribute. They have usually a pretty extensive guideline on how to do it, and then can use GitHub. Like there's a separate section for discussions where you discuss, and then if there's something you really want to work on, you like just fork the repo and make a pull request once you are ready with your bit as well. And let's talk about some known projects. So first and foremost is like the Linux operating system itself is open source. Git basically. I think like in the next slides, some people have questions about what is Git and what is GitHub, how do they really are different. We'll get to that, but Git also like the version control system which helps you maintain code is also open source. Node.js, a very popular framework for backend devs, especially, that is also open source, and there is a lot more to add. And a lot of these things, especially during early days of development, a lot of these things were publicly shared so that there is some inputs that are given. And then I think like this meme also really helps explain. This is like one of my favorite XKCD comic strips, which basically shows the significance even of a small open source project, which really helped out, build out the modern digital infrastructure on top of it. So I think like this should definitely give you perspective of how significant, like these kind of contributions come into, right? Um, as I mentioned, I'm not covering a lot of content in depth. I would rather want to keep it open for questions. I think like we have just set up enough base, and these are the questions which I'm going to be covering. So how open source helps gain experience in project development, how building projects can help young developers, how to choose a good project idea, more in terms of like a hackathon thing, and also the importance of Git and GitHub in a developer's life. So these are the things we'll be covering. So I think we can get started with the first question, that is how open source helps gain experience in project development. So just a couple of points here. Again, like, there's a lot more to it, but these are the top 4 points which I could sort of put together and would be happy to talk about. So the first thing is what production code looks like. So production code basically means like all the running infrastructure which is already out there, be it Instagram or Facebook or whatever, like any sort of website app that are using. How do they actually work? Because when you're starting out as an engineer, you're writing some code. It might be like quite different from what actually it looks like when you are sort of pushing code to something that is already live and being used by thousands and millions of people, right? So when you start with like smaller open source projects, when you contribute to it, you know what the kind of feeling, like how production code would look like and how contributing to it makes sense. So as I mentioned, a lot of these open source projects have like thorough documentation. The documentation will help you get started on what the project is about, what are the key components, what are some of the known issues that are being correctly fixed, that is in forms of like issues on GitHub, and like what, like usually even when you open a PR, there is a PR basically stands for pull request. So whenever you open a pull request, there's like a template behind it, and like even like our internal engineering team for Devfolio uses it. And whenever there's a pull request, there is a certain things that you need to mention, like are these changes going to break some existing flow? Are these just copy changes on like what text is written? Is it just little changes or what kind of changes? So usually you will get to understand how contributing to even code in a company looks like. Right? So that's one point. Second is writing clean code. Like there would be some good practices that you'll get to learn. Of course, like right off the bat, when you learn how to code, it's not necessarily you may know the best practices, but when you see how people are contributing to these open source projects, you can go like based on the pull requests that are made, you can see like how people have contributed. Could be like a 6-7 line of code which also like sort of helps into the algorithm or something, like depends on the project to project, but you'll be able to see like there are comments to it. When should you add comments? How do you document those things? How do you explain how it works? These are the kind of practices which really helps you also understand what you're writing, and more importantly, when the project maintainer also sees your pull request, he should be able to understand, he or she should be able to understand as well that what is the contribution you're making, how is it really helping the project, and also like when future maintainers or like contributors come into the picture, your code would be there live, and then they'll be able to understand what is it actually doing. So some good coding practices you'll be able to learn when you sort of get into these sort of things. How to maintain large repos, I think like that's a very big thing when it like the open source projects could be something really small. I think like Devfolio maintains React OTP input. That is one of the packages we maintain. So that is also like a really popular React component that we are maintaining ourselves, and like people also do give it a look. They try to understand how it works, and like there is like an intricate layer of code that all is also beneath it. So everything is there on GitHub. Again, it's documented. So you'll be able to see like how these repos are actually working, and based on like the PRs being made, you'll be able to understand how people are taking smaller chunks of the working and sort of make it better or whatever. Like they're adding improvements, they're documenting the code also, whatever it is, like from these big repositories that working on smaller chunks. So like when you are also about to make those contributions, you necessarily don't have to feel that you have to make changes everywhere. The main thing is you go through the documentation of the repo, which is also the fourth point. Documentation is really important. Go through it, you understand how it works, and then you pick out like smaller chunks of code rather than like just forking the entire thing. You can just like work, you can pick and work on minor things and then submit it as a pull request to the maintainer. So I think that I hope that answers the question. I'll cover one more question and then maybe I'll just take a quick pause to go through the chats if you have any questions. So yeah, next slide. So yeah, the next question is how building projects can help young developers. So again, when we say young developers, it necessarily doesn't. It isn't about just. It's not about the age. Right? It's basically like how early you are into your project building phase, your development phase. You could have started writing code when you were 10, or you could be also starting to write code when you're 30, 35, just because you suddenly got interested. So when we say young developers, it's basically people who are new to programming, and it has nothing to do with age, right? Um, so the first thing is like you get an inside-out knowledge about like like how this project. Apologies, one second. Yeah, you get an inside-out knowledge on how like a website or whatever like the application is works, like how front end is working, how back end is working. How do you like take a larger problem statement, break it into small chunks, and just piece it together so that it works entirely? So whenever like you shouldn't be like the kind of approach which I also try to follow, and I see a lot of people following is you don't you basically don't have to like first I'll learn React and then I will think what to do. Right? You pick the problem you want to solve first. Let's say you want to make a small website of yours, which like could be a portfolio website. Then you then decide what do you want to learn to be able to achieve that. Because when you have a larger goal in mind, um, you are able to break the problems, and then you're able to based on your research or mentorship wherever you get help from, you'll be able to understand what are what are the things you need to learn, right? So building an end-to-end project gives you an inside-out knowledge of how this entire like the how what does it take to build a project. So yeah, what does it take to build a project? As simple as that, right? Maintaining projects. Once you have built the project, there are some feedbacks you might get. There would be other people who are interested in contributing. So you basically also can become a maintainer of your project, right? That project you can turn it into open source so that people are not only using your project but also understand like how your code is working and what improvements can be made. So you also get to learn the role of being a project maintainer, right? And then you become very realistic with your approach and ideas. So like the more and sort of perfect it so that it helps you like sort of win the hackathon. So the more projects you build, the more blockers and all you come into, and it will also help you like understand how you should be going about these things. Okay. Okay. Okay, okay, got it. So yeah, I got to know like there was some internet issue or something. Like, so basically, I'll just repeat the point about maintaining projects. So the gist of it is basically once you have built your own project, you feel it is something which is being used by a lot of people or can be used by a lot of people. You can sort of make it open source and let people not only use it but also go through the code, and they will be also able to contribute. And then you get to make your own documentation. You get to maintain your own project. What are the rules and regulations? What is the broader idea? What more do you see it to become? And then you put all of these things into documentation, and other people can sort of start contributing to it. So that's about maintaining projects, and I just covered realistic approaches and idea. So that's basically you just unless I think like I'll just take a very simple analogy like making chicken biryani. When you just read the menu, it's sorry the recipe, it's like hey that's just a couple of steps. But when you actually get to doing it, you will realize like what are the kind of steps that comes into it. So that is also about writing code. Thinking of a product is one thing, but actually building it out is another challenge. So the more number of projects you make, it could be any side project. Not everything has to be solving a greater good sort of thing. Like just for example, I use this a lot back in 2021 when the third installment of the Spider-Man movie was coming in. I wanted to be the first one to get the tickets, right? Because it had insane craze, and I wanted it for day one. So what I did is I just built a small Chrome extension which would refresh the Book My Show site a couple of times, like in some intervals, and then it will just play like a tone and send me an email notification that like it's ready, right? So again, I didn't know how to build Chrome extensions back then, but what I knew is like I have a problem in mind. Now I know how do I want to solve it. So my problem was getting tickets. So first thing I knew, hey, like one way of approaching this is Chrome extensions. And then like I went and did a tutorial on how Chrome extensions are built. And then within that code, I started making changes as per my requirements. And then it is something now which works. Right. So I didn't learn Chrome extension building first and then look out for problems. I just knew I had a problem, and then in the course of solving that problem, I learned new things. Right? That kind of approach will help you keep fresh with what you want to, go forward with. So, yeah. I'm just going to take a quick pause and maybe go over the chat. Maybe wait for like the host to mention if they have any other uh, questions they might have personally received. I'm just going through like the chat. It's okay. It's okay. I can see the question. So I think Jay Khanna is
Yes.
asking. Oh, I just saw the question, so not an issue. Would you recommend contributing to smaller projects or larger projects? So Jay, again, this sort of depends on how far you are into this. Maybe the simplest answer would be you start with something small. Maybe it could be I think for me, one way of also understanding how these things work is also working on my final year project with my friends. We had like a proper repo build. There was PR templates and everything. So that way we internally also got an idea of how production code is managed. And that is also some way you can sort of explore. And yeah, of course, you can start by smaller projects. Usually the community is very welcoming even to new devs. Basically just pick out projects based on the experience you already have, be it small or larger. Let's say if you're really good React dev, there's something you can help with. Just find the repo and sort of get to working on it. And more importantly, when you're choosing these projects, it's also good to choose something which you relate to as a problem statement. That the factor of you being able to relate to it helps you think more about the edge cases, think about what the requirements look like, and you just be better with it. So I think that works. I can see one more question. I'll be happy to pick it up. Sir, does the okay? You don't have to call me sir first of all. I'm good with Aniket. I'm just Aniket. Does the tech stack of a project matter more or the use cases? It's an interesting question. I think my thoughts on this would be the use case. Like I would prefer more on the use case. Tech stack, you don't have to be really bent on this is the only thing that should be used everywhere. Every problem has its own requirements. The tech stack would vary from project to project, but I would rather focus on the use cases I would see and then check out what is the tech stack we use. Usually lesser popular projects may be using solutions which is not really effective. There might be better alternatives. So it depends on how the community is for each of these projects. You'll be able to sort of understand what or why they are using it. So I personally feel use cases are more important. I think I might deviate slightly, but I have a very interesting example which would help relate. Right? Is like let's say you want to build a house. Right? You're building a house. You're putting things together. Uh, so when you're building, you don't have to first learn how to use a hammer and then decide you want to build the house. How does it usually work? You want to build a house, then you figure out okay, this part of the section requires these tools, these part of the section require other tools, right? And then you sort of go through it one at a time, right? So you don't usually start learning how to use the drill and everything and then get to the house building. Right? So again, you sort of break down. First, you go to your larger goal, that is building the house, and then based on the requirements of the house, you understand what are the different parts that are required, and then you get into the depths of it, right? And similarly, you go to in the similar case, building the house similarly works with building a project, something solving a problem. And then once you get into once you start breaking down the problem, then you know what tech stack you want to use. There are something where some particular tech stacks work out better than the other. So again, all of this just boils down to what problem you're solving. So just focus on the problem, and then when you start investigating it, you will be able to understand what tech stack comes into the picture. I hope that's helpful. No questions for now. I think I'll just quickly go on to the last two questions I have on the slide. Oh, okay, sorry. How to choose a good project idea? I think this is more on a hackathon orientation basis. So what I'm going to do is the best way to answer is just to also cover what basically what we factor into judging. We also have a judging feature built onto the platform, and we feel these 5 points really cover how really cover how the project should be judged, right? So the first thing is technicality. The project that you're building should justify the amount of time that has been given to build. It could be a 24-hour hackathon, could be a 36-hour hackathon. So has the project achieved enough technical stuff? Does it justify the build time? So practicality is an important factor. Originality. So when we talk about originality, it basically just means that how original your idea is. Is it something completely new, or are you solving an existing problem with a better solution? Right. If you're just solving something which already exists and there is no new innovation in it, then you don't get points. Because very honestly, based on the number of student-run hackathons I've seen and the projects coming in, I see a lot of people build uh, attendance management using face recognition. I think there is a lot of things already for that. It's for me, it has just become a repetitive project unless there is something new you are bringing into it. So just because you know how to build the tech doesn't necessarily mean you build that project. You try to think of an idea which you want to solve, which is not already which is not already out there, or if it is already there but you want to improve it, that works. That's original enough, right? Practicality, how practical your project is it something which is accessible? So let's say I think I'll just explain this with an example. You will sort of come and tell me that, hey, I have built something better, which is something better than Guilfoyle's AI, right? I have this massive AI project, it can do anything, so on and so forth. But then for me to use it, you'll ask me, hey, can you go through this project? Can you install it in your terminal? You have to write a few Python commands, and then it would work, right? So it's not really accessible, right? It is not something which has a front end to it, which I can easily start using. So in order to even work with a great project, you're showing it to me on a terminal, which is not really accessible. So technicality wise, it might be a very great project, but then the practical use of it is also then sort of reduced, right? It should be something which is handy, right? Um, Next is aesthetics. So at the end of the day, the judges want to be able to go through the projects themselves. Again, like also just another heads up for everyone, this is not necessarily the rules of open code. This is something which I'm talking about separately in general at hackathons. We have been hosting hackathons for a couple of years now. This is what we have put together, right? This doesn't have to do specifically anything with open code. Given there was a question about what makes a good project, I figured we'd talk about these points. So yeah, getting back to aesthetics, the judges would like to use and be able to understand what a project is about. So aesthetics basically just boils down to the UI UX, the user interface and the user experience of your project, right? Last but not the least is the wow factor. This is something more for the judges. Basically, there is no quantifiable definition for this. It's not like defined. Wow factor basically means if you're just wowed after looking at the project. Like an example I'll give is maybe the project is not practical enough, but hey, it was built by first year students who are pretty new to programming. This was their first hackathon, right? So it may not be at par with experienced projects, but these people being extreme beginners put on a very good fight to compete. So then we give them more points in the wow factor. So I hope these 5 points sort of explain when you're choosing your projects. Happy to go through some hackathon projects which were one of the winners in our past hackathons. So first one is Seva Shop. Again, it's like a 2020 project, but it was insanely good. Basically, it was a solution to create marketing, for creating marketing and tracking online stores. Like some vendor who is not necessarily very experienced with how online businesses work, they can just basically set up a quick shop, online presence using WhatsApp, and they would have all these things available, right? Um, Next is Payall. This is a Web3 project towards. This is a Web3 project. So basically, it's just like a decentralized P2P payments engine, like UPI. So it basically just abstracts like a lot of complications that comes into when basically abstracting away the whole complexity of blockchains and just providing a very simple experience for the user. So basically, they had just built the package on how the payment engine would work, and as you can see for the user, basically it's just like a WhatsApp thing. You say create balance, pay this person this many tokens, and so on. So the practicality feature really came into the picture. So they had a very powerful engine built, and they just made a WhatsApp bot which helps make it more accessible. This is Cody. He had done an AI hackathon called Stranger Hacks. So basically, like let's say you're working on you're solving some DSA problems on Lead Code or HackerRank. So what this does is it's just a Chrome extension which goes through the problem statements. It will just scrape the web page. It will get context from what's the question, what are the examples, and then it will just convert it into a chatbot which you can interact with. Right? So as you can say, uh, in this example over here, give me a hint on how to start solving this question. So without actually writing down the code for it, it could also give you like like a solution, like a hint, basically, right? And and like if you want more context, like each problem has like multiple approaches, so it's like list all solution approaches, and then it will tell brute force, using stack, using divide and conquer. So it basically just turns into like your coding buddy. I think that was the like tagline, your DSA interview prep buddy. So like this was something which is really accessible. They use GPT to build this out. So um, like using GPT made it simpler to implement the AI part, but the way they have put together this project, especially like the scraping part, to be able to get context and being able to give multiple options on like what needs to be done, that was like super impressive. And last but not the least, it's Goda Crypto. I've been using this example for 2 years, but seriously, it's like one of my favorite projects because of how clean it is. So this is basically like a chess game which has some Web3 aspects to it. So you basically, on winning the match, you get an NFT minted. You can even stake against your opponent. So let's say you put 0.005 ETH, the opponent also put 0.005 ETH, then the pool becomes 0.01 ETH, and then whoever wins takes it all. So there's like a management system which takes care of it. So at the end of the day, it's just a chess game, but they were able to bring in these sort of elements. And what I really liked about is it. Usually, when you're using Web3 projects, there is some complexity which comes into it, but this really abstracts it away. At the end of the day, you are just playing chess, right? All the staking part and everything, they are able to take care of it. You just connect your wallet and then you just go play the game and stake and whatever it is. Right. All right. Last question: importance of Git and GitHub in a developer's life. Um, I think like let's like I think the is first popular thing is the difference between Git and GitHub. I think like so first Git is the VCS, the version control system. I think that's what it stands for, which helps you track the development cycle of your code. So let's say I have 2 lines of code now. Let's say I have 5 lines of code now, which is basically like, just for example's sake, I'll keep it very simple. It's just a for loop which prints numbers from 1 to 10, right? Um, so that is your first segment of the code. You worked on one part, then you just commit it. Commit means they will just put a step key, like this was the first step of my product, of the cycle of my project, right? Then you go ahead and also add one more function in your same code which prints 10 to 1, like this is the same thing in reverse. So here was your original code, you write more code here, and then when you commit, then this entire thing is flagged. So it's like snapshots of various phases of your code, right? And then let's say like from when you put both the code together, the 1 to 10 and 10 to 1 together, your project started breaking for some reason, it's not working anymore. So what you can do is you can backtrack and go to the previous state of your project, which was the first commit, that is only the 1 to 10. And without just doing control Z again and again, it's not that tedious. You just go back to your previous state of the project. Just imagine this happening on a larger scale with a lot of things working, especially with code that is in production by companies, right? You're working on multiple things. Let's say one change breaks a few things, then you can easily revert. Revert is the term which is used. You can revert back to the original state of the project. So Git helps you take snapshots of the various stages of your project, and then you can just backtrack or do whatever you want with it. And then one more thing it also enables is collaborative code. People can, this is like your original branch. People can just create a separate branch of themselves where they are working on something else. You continue the development cycle here, and then you merge it together once the changes here are done, right? And then it again continues in a single uh, branch. So again, this, a lot of things Git offers. I'm just talking about 1% of what it offers. But in simplicity, Git just helps you manage and maintain your code very, very efficiently, right? Now GitHub is the online platform where you are able to sort of uh, post, let's say post for the simplicity of it, post your project, share it with other people online. So people online can go through your projects. They don't have to just necessarily download your code. It's a place where all these things happen, and GitHub basically just works on top of Git, right? So yeah, I think I explained the difference well. Uh, just give me a second. So yeah, first thing is this is your online persona. So even when, let's say, you're applying to any engineering roles for your internship or something, the first thing which, or even as simple as a hackathon, right? Even we just did ETH India, and when we were selecting builders, going through their GitHub is one of the first things we did. So why do we check GitHub? We want to see what are the kind of things you're working on, what are the kind of tech stacks you have covered. GitHub just helps summarizes all those things. Uh, then next is maintaining projects. It's very simple to maintain your project, share it, collaborate, everything. All of open source projects. There are multiple things. There's GitHub, there's GitLab, but it's just GitHub has the most popularity, and that is where the most of the open source projects are maintained, right? So GitHub basically helps you there, and then proof of your work. Let's say on LinkedIn, you just add hey, I'm a React developer, but there's no real proof, right? Even I can go and add that, say, hey, I am really good with Rust. I've worked on a lot of Rust projects, but on GitHub, the fact that you're writing code and pushing it on GitHub shows that you've actually worked on something, right? It's not just false claims, right? So that is how we also see. Let's say you claim that you are good with front end. I'll just go and see in GitHub, what kind of front end projects you have worked on. And for me, that's how it works, right? So just like how you maintain LinkedIn with your work experience and everything, it's best that whatever code you're writing, just push it on GitHub. Even if, as I mentioned, even if it is a very tiny project, it's all right. Just push it, right? We can also see the progress of people, someone studying with a simple hello world thing, then you put in a bigger project, and then with experience you add better things, and we can see that entire growth, right? And GitHub really helps summarize all these things really well. um, it also shows the percentage of contributions you've made, number of times you've opened pull requests. There's a lot of things which basically helps summarize what you're actually doing in terms of tech, right? So even if you're making a simple school project, do not hesitate on putting it on GitHub, right? That is something which any tech recruiter, sorry, goes through. So I think that's about the 4 question and answers. I'll be happy to go through the chat again. Oh wow, there's an insane number of chat. I'll just go through it.
Yes,
Uh,
sir. So
yeah.
the first question is from Hupesh Devangan, who wishes to ask, what are some common mistakes to avoid while learning how to contribute in open source?
Intimidated on working or contributing to bigger projects, I think the simplest answer here is just make sure you are going through the documentation of the project. Do not start working on anything unless you understand how things work, what are the procedures, because for different open source project there are different there are a lot of things are definitely similar, but how they maintain it, what are the periods at which the maintainers review it, what are the things especially commenting your code. I think that's the major complaint. People want your code to be there has to be a good amount of comments. Like lesser and more comments, both are issues, right? Again, like from project to project, it would matter. I think if you're afraid, just go directly and understand how it works. And after how it works, I'm pretty sure good projects have good maintainers, and you can interact with the community behind the project, and they'll be able to help you out on the do's and don'ts about it. So I hope that answers your questions.
So the next question is from Rishika Gupta. Uh, are there resources or guides available to help newcomers understand and contribute effectively?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure. I do not have them handy on my PC I am on right now, but on my laptop, I think I have like a few guides, and I'm pretty sure even like the engineering team at Deffolio have a lot of blogs, articles, something which would definitely help. Why don't you join the Deffolio community group and put up that question, and I'll ensure we send those links over. So
Rakim asks, would you recommend to spend more time on planning out the project as opposed to just starting right away? Or, well, what should be the ideal ratio be like between the two?
all right, Rakin, that's a good question. Basically, like what I would suggest here is you shouldn't spend time on either of them too much. Like if you spend too much time on planning, you really don't get to execution. And if you're just executing without planning, you don't really know what's your roadmap, right? So when you're taking a project idea, what you should first do is break down like the key components, um, let's say I'll take an example. I might go a bit further on this, but I'll just take a quick example. Let's say you're building a snake, right? So the first, like, how do I break this problem, right? The first thing I would need is the board first, board with some borders or something like that. You start with the board, right? Then I want to put one block, one square block, which should move around the screen, right? There should be some speed attached to it. And the next part I'll add to it is like the key binding, so that if I press up, it goes up, press left, it goes left, right? That's the next thing I would do. And then after that, once that is done, I would make a function which randomly places a food object on the screen. So every time an instance happens, it should place the food on a new location on the screen. The next is you make the interaction between the snake and the food, so that when the snake eats the food, that the function should be triggered to call like the next location, right? And then the last but not the not last thing, but like the next thing which you add is like once it eats the food, then there should be another block appended to the snake, which then kind of increases the length, and then you write a function which also detects if it is colliding with itself. Right? So as you can see, like I kind of broke the problem as I went through it. So first thing, so that's the important thing, right? Like when you're building a project, first you break it down into the different phases, right? What do you want and how do you get to it, right? Spend some time over there. Take help from mentors if you're unsure about a few things, and then once there's clarity, you sort of put it, as I mentioned earlier, like you put it down in post-its. Post-its are very classy idea. I just like pencil paper vibes a lot. So you just put it down together, break it down, and then each of you takes separate chits and starts working on it. This is like a classic reference from Silicon Valley. If you should definitely check out that show if you are a tech fan, right? So again, you don't want to focus too much on either of the things. You have to make sure like you're doing both at the same time. I hope that answers your question.
So the next question is from Shashank. How is the project documentation maintained?
Oh, that's a good question. Many people have different ways of documenting their code, or and even like the project repo itself. So one thing is like if the project is relatively simpler, people just put it in the GitHub README of the project. Like, what does it solve? Here's the working. They put some GIFs on how it works, then how to get started, how to install and everything, and then how do you start code contributions, and then they put a guide of like some good practices. Or if like it's an extensive thing, there's something called Gitbook, which you can check out if it's like a complex thing. A lot of companies like put their documentations on Gitbook. I'll just put the link in the stream chat. Uh, it's just simply gitbook.com. So I just posted it in the chat of the YouTube live stream. So yeah, like that is most of the cases I've seen.
Now Rishika asks, are there any incentive programs or systems in place to encourage contributors?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So some basically just works on like complete goodwill of the developers, which also for me is a fair reason. If you relate to the problem it's solving or the importance it's bringing, definitely. But there are also some reward system in place by some project maintainers. Again, I'm not really sure about these projects, but what I know about is the whole blockchain and Web3 thing, which is coming up. Is also have like they have mechanisms to incentivize people making contributions to some repos. So people just create something called DAOs around it. It's like a decentralized autonomous organizations who make, let's say they are maintaining their repo of their own, and then they have like some incentives on like valid PR requests that are coming in, and people get tokens based on it. So and like some companies also have some reward system. So again, it really varies from like it's different from project to project. So I hope that helps answer.
Bhupesh has the next question. How to make relations with mentors in GSOC?
Um, like if you're talking about the GSOC program, then that is something you apply to, and once you are in, then you are mentors for it. But if you're just talking about mentors in general, a lot of people are happy to help online. If there's anything you are looking to help with or looking for some help as well, then just feel free to join various coding communities. I'm pretty sure there are some good people who can help you out. And I would also be happy to plug in Defolio. Just join the Defolio Telegram or Discord. The links are on the website. and just feel free to post your questions. Other people from our community would be happy to answer, and even our engineers will be able to pick it up. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Shashank Arora asks, should we contribute evenly in a lot of repositories or just focus on one at a time?
Uh, I mean, like, again, I think like I covered this point. Like, it basically just boils down to your interest and how you relate to the problem the repo is solving. So yeah, I would say that if you really feel that you're bringing in a lot of expertise to a particular repo, you can just focus on that, and basically just don't go hoarding open source repositories and making meaningless contributions, like just updating their README with like some documentation. Sometimes it works, but that's not the only thing, right? Because I've seen a lot of people just add full stops, like just making some small things. Like, do not do that. That's simply like not really worth even the maintainer's time. If just contribute to repos where you genuinely feel you're contributing to code, you're actually working on the inner functionality of it. Um, so yeah, I would suggest that way.
Next and the last question is from Rishika. Besides GitHub, are there other platforms or tools used for collaboration or project management?
Yeah, 100%. Like GitHub is the most popular option out there, but there are other platforms as well called GitLab. There's Bitbucket. So people are maintaining their codes over there. It again depends. Like from if you're talking about open source projects, some people find GitHub better, some people find GitLab better. But at the crux of it, all of them are using Git, the version control system thing in like as far as I'm aware, I might be wrong as well, but I'm pretty sure all of them use Git as its base to maintain projects. It's just like on top of it, what GitHub brings. Let's say for example, GitHub brings discussions, comments, and all which you can do on code. Right. So other platforms have their own benefits. So yeah, that's. I hope that answers your question. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Sir, if you would like to add something.
Oh yeah, just as a closing note, it was really fun talking about open source. After a while, I think like mostly I've like spoken to builders at hackathons. Open source is definitely one of the topics, but specifically talking about open source today really helped me put things into perspective and the excitement around it, and also like putting together the slides. Also, like I get brought in perspective about a lot of things. So yeah, like open source for the win. I hope everyone at the Open Code event, like make their best. Do not hesitate in asking questions. Like the communities are pretty helpful, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to build softwares that are beautiful, right? So I would like to close with that.
Thank Thank you, Aniket, for that wonderful session. We all enjoyed it and learned a lot from you. Thank you for being here with us today. With that, we have kicked off our journey through Opencode 23. Remember, Opencode 23 is not merely about solving challenges, it's about forging connections, expanding your skill sets, and embracing the ethos of open source development. So let's dive headfirst into the month long extravaganza of open source coding. Encourage you, uh, encourage you to make the most of this opportunity. Interact with your peers, explore projects, and elevate your skills. Thank you for joining us today at the inauguration of OpenCode 23. Let's set that for an exceptional journey ahead, filled with innovation, collaboration, and incredible achievements.